Namaste. We continue with our series on synthesis of yoga, and we are on page 32, and the paragraph is the beginning with for the contact of the human and individual consciousness. And before we read the para, I'll tell you in summary what he has said earlier, because we are having the class once a week and we have to re-establish the context. That's why. So in the previous para, he has told us that it is this truth of God, nature and individual soul that necessitates all philosophies to posit a God, a Lord, a Supreme Soul, an Ishvara. Yoga is not possible without a conception of God and a goal towards which perfection is directed. Okay? It is towards Him that all yogic efforts are directed. Also, it is He who guides, encourages, supports, gives strength to succeed. Another idea commonly spoken in the path of devotion is that as the individual yearns after God, God also yearns after the devotee. He who chooses the infinite has been chosen by the infinite, he says elsewhere. Also, the divine works in the world not directly, but by the intermediary of the cosmos, which again creates the individual. So, the divine creates the cosmos, and the cosmos, universal nature, creates the individual. So finally, God works in the world through the individual. The aim of yoga should therefore be to become a faithful, loyal servant and instrument of the divine. Jnana cannot be possible without a seeker, the sought and the seeking. Similarly, Bhakti Yoga cannot exist if there is no devotee, no Lord to whom the devotion is offered, and no devotion linking the two together. Similarly, Bhakta, Bhagavan and Bhagavatam. Okay? So, even if our view be based on Advaita, non-dualism, these three principles, the Trinity is indispensable. The divine, the cosmos and the individual, or the love, the lover and the loved. So, this Trinity is always essential. God, the universe and the individual. So, having said this, now we can go back to and read the next para. For the contact of the human and individual consciousness with the divine is the very essence of yoga. Yoga is a union of that which has become separated in the play of the universe with its own true self, origin and universality. So, we can expand a little on this, perhaps, just 1 second. Yeah. So, yoga is a union of that which has become separated in the play of the universe with its own true self. The universe is created by the divine, and the universe is creating the individual. And in yoga, the individual is trying to establish his contact with the divine through the cosmos. And the divine is the true self, the origin and the universality. So, the contact may take place at any point of the complex and intricately organized consciousness which we call our personality. Our personality consists of a body, a vitality and a mentality. And the contact with the divine can start at any of these points. It can start even with the body, and that's an attempt of Hatha Yoga. And it can start with the vitality, and that would be the Bhakti Yoga. And it can go through the mind, that would be the Jnana Yoga. It may be affected in the physical through the body, in the vital through the action of those functionings which determine the state and the experiences of our nervous being, through the mentality, whether by means of the emotional heart, the active will, or the understanding mind, or more largely by general conversion of the mental consciousness in all its activities. It may equally be accomplished through a direct awakening to the universal or transcendent truth and bliss by the conversion of the central ego in the mind. And according to the point of contact that we choose, will be the type of the yoga that we practice. So man has got 3 essential parts of himself. He has a mind, which is the highest. He has a vital, which actually gives him the energy. And he has a body, which becomes the base with which he works in the physical world. So yoga can start at any of these points. If you use the body, he will tell you the systems of yoga. If you use the body, you are likely to practice Hatha yoga. If you use your vital, the emotional being, I shouldn't say the vital because the vital has got 2 parts in it, the higher vital and the lower vital. The higher vital is the one that has got nobler emotions, okay? Love, generosity, selflessness, okay? Sympathy for others. These are the characteristics of the higher vital. The lower vital usually is murky and has got all these negative vibrations. Hate, okay, dislike, enmity, selfishness, egoistic ambitions, desires. These are all the things at the lower vital. So, depending on if you want to approach the divine through the emotional part, it becomes Bhakti Yoga. You have to go through the path of love and devotion. And if you use the mind, you have to go through knowledge because the mind is always seeking knowledge. So this is what he's saying. You have a choice. You can go through any of these 3 parts of the being. Okay? So we go to the next para. For if, leaving aside the complexities of these particular processes, we fix our regard on the central principle of the chief schools of yoga still prevalent in India, we find that they arrange themselves in an ascending order which starts from the lowest rung of the ladder, the body, and ascends to the direct contact between the individual soul and the transcendent and universal self. Hatha Yoga selects the body and the vital functionings as its instruments of perfection and realization. Its concern is with the gross body. Okay? The gross body is the physical body that you see. Okay. Raj Yoga selects the mental being in its different parts as its lever power. Okay? It concentrates on the mind. It uses the mind to rise to God. It concentrates on the subtle body. You have a subtle body which is the inner body if you want. It's a body that supports the physical body. The triple path of works, of love and of knowledge uses some part of the mental being, will, heart and intellect as a starting point and seeks by its conversion to arrive at the liberating truth, beatitude and infinity, which are the nature of the spiritual life. So, when you have a spiritual life, you are losing your identification with body, mind, life, and you rise into the spiritual levels of consciousness, and you are likely to experience liberation, truth, beatitude, bliss, and infinity. Okay? Which are the nature of the spiritual life. Its method is a direct commerce between the human Purusha in the individual body and the divine Purusha who dwells in every body and yet transcends all form and name. Everything in the physical world, everything is form and name, nama, rupa. Okay? It is not the reality. It is just the outermost part of a human being. And it's not only human being, it applies to everything down the scale, right up to matter. So, He has mentioned here only 5 systems of yoga. Hatha yoga, okay, and he will describe the Hatha yoga, Raj yoga, and then he has clubbed all the 3 together: Jnana yoga, Bhakti yoga, Karma yoga. Jnana yoga uses the mind, Bhakti yoga uses the heart, and Karma yoga uses the will in the body, the will in the vital, and also the actions that you are doing. All your actions, physical actions of the body, are offered to the divine, remembered and offered and consecrated. That's the Karma yoga. It is the widest because it takes all action into and turns all actions into towards the divine. Whereas in the Jnana yoga, your thoughts are turning towards the divine. You don't care for the other two. He will describe all that. So now we come to Hatha yoga. Okay. Hatha yoga aims at the conquest of the life and the body, whose combination in the food sheath and the vital vehicle constitutes, as we have seen, the gross body, and whose equilibrium is the foundation of all nature's workings in the human being. We'll read the para and we'll come back to it. The equilibrium established by nature is sufficient for the normal egoistic life. It is insufficient for the purposes of the Hatha yogin, for it is calculated on the amount of vital and dynamic force necessary to drive the physical engine during the normal span of human life and to perform more or less adequately the various workings demanded of it by the individual life inhabiting this frame and the world environment by which it is conditioned. Hatha yoga, therefore, seeks to rectify nature and establish another equilibrium by which the physical frame will be able to sustain the inrush of an increasing vital or dynamic force of prana, indefinite, almost infinite in its quantity or intensity. In nature, the equilibrium is based upon the individualization of a limited quantity and force of the prana. More than that, the individual is, by personal and hereditary habit, unable to bear, use, or control. In Hatha yoga, the equilibrium opens the door to the universalization of the individual vitality by admitting into the body, containing, using, and controlling a much less fixed and limited action of the universal energy. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of the para. He is describing Hatha yoga, what Hatha yoga does. What Srimad is mentioning here, we'll read sentence by sentence, but what he is saying is that the body uses very little energy, and the energy which is there in the universe, if you can think of it, the sun. What is the amount of energy that the sun has got? What is the amount of energy that the stars and the constellations have got? Comets and whatnot, okay? All the heavenly bodies is tremendous amount of force. Stars are disintegrating, stars are being born, okay? So the amount of energy is infinite there. So what about us? That huge amount of prana is taken and a small amount is taken, and our vitality is built on that. Just like our body is built from infinite matter and a small amount of matter is taken and our body is built from matter. Similarly, the infinite universal prana is infinite, and that prana, that energy is taken and given a form in the individual which is his vital being. So you use very little. But the Hatha yogin is not satisfied with that. He wants to use a tremendous amount of power. So he trains his body and his vital to open to the universal energy, and he gets all that power that comes into him. He develops tremendous amount of capacities in the vital in the body. Okay? So what is that? We'll discuss that when we come to it. So Hatha yoga aims at the conquest of the life and the body. What is meant by the conquest of the life? Normally, our vital is controlling us. Okay? We have desires and we succumb to the desires. Our life vitality, if you fall ill, you can do nothing about it. Okay? The life and the body is controlling you. But in Hatha Yoga, the consciousness in the being wants to control life and body. That's the difference. Okay? So, and the conquest of the life and body, whose combination in the food sheath. The food sheath is nothing but the body. Why do they call it a food sheath? Because all matter can be considered, in a sense, food. Because food is consumed, okay? So, when we are consuming food, all food is matter. But all matter is not necessarily food, because a stone you can't eat. But it is possible for this stone to slowly over ages dissolve. So nothing is fixed, it is mutable. Anyway, the body is called the food sheath. Food as equivalent to matter in that sense. Okay, so the food sheath and the vital vehicle. Sandra is calling the vital vehicle. That's interesting, because if the vitality is not there in you, you will not be able to move. You will only be matter. You will be a lump of flesh. That's all. It's a vitality. It is the vital in you that gives you the power to move. Just like the engine in a car, okay, allows the car to move. If the engine is not there and the fuel is not there, it will not move. In our case, the fuel is the food that you eat, and that gives you the energy, and the vitality allows you to move and act. Okay? So it's called the vehicle. Okay? So constitutes, as we have seen, the gross body, and whose equilibrium is the foundation of all nature's workings in the human being. In other words, there is a balance between the vital and the body. The amount of energy that the the body needs is being provided by the vital. If more comes in, if this balance is disturbed, there is a problem. Okay? If there is no energy, less energy than the body needs, then your body will not be able to move. You will feel weak. And if you take more food than you need, there will be disturbance in the being, because you are not able to absorb that energy. So the Hatha Yogin trains himself to accept any amount of energy into the body. The concept is clear, huh? When the amount of energy is less than what you need, you will feel tired and you will feel unable to move. Laziness is one particular example of that. Okay? Then, when the energy is more than you can accept, and you cannot tolerate that much energy, you are likely to fall ill. Okay? So, there has to be a balance between the body and the vital. And that balance is just correct for normal life. It's a very small amount of energy. But the Hatha Yogin is training his body and the vital for a huge amount of energy to come in. And what happens to that? He will tell you. First of all, you can conquer life. What is meant by conquering life? You don't fall ill very easily. You are not subject so easily to death. So, your longevity increases. Your health increases. So, these the two things you can say that there is a conquest of life. Okay? And the body in a certain sense, whose combination of food, sheath and the vitality constitutes, as we have seen, the gross body, and whose equilibrium is the foundation of all nature's workings in the human being. The equilibrium established by nature is sufficient for the normal egoistic life. Enough just for your normal life. It is insufficient for the purposes of the Hatha Yogin. Why? Because he wants mastery. He wants to have much more energy than what is normally available to man. Why? Because he wants to be master of the life. He doesn't want to fall ill, and he doesn't want to be subject to disease. Okay, he doesn't want to, and old age also. You can actually delay old age by taking in more energy into yourself. So this is what Hatha Yoga does. For it is calculated on the amount of vital or dynamic force necessary to drive the physical engine during the normal span of human life and to perform more or less adequately the various workings demanded of it by the individual life inhabiting this frame and the world environment by which it is conditioned. The physical body exists in the world environment and it is conditioned by it. Okay? You live in the physical world, and the physical world determines the conditions under which you live. You can't help it. Okay? So, Hatha Yoga, therefore, seeks to rectify nature and establish another equilibrium by which the physical frame will be able to sustain the inrush of an increasing vital or dynamic force of prana, indefinite, almost infinite in its quantity or intensity. Now, this is interesting. At our level, if too much energy comes in, we will not be able to bear it. Okay? In fact, you are likely to lose consciousness. Okay, that also can happen if too much force comes in. Okay. But the Hatha Yogin is training himself for that. How does he do that? He does that by asanas and pranayama. These are the two things that he does. Pranayama gives a certain capacity of the vital to sustain greater force coming into himself. And asanas gives a stability and a solid fixity to the body. So, he will discuss that later on. In nature, the equilibrium is based upon the individualization of a limited quantity and force of the prana. Okay? The amount of energy that we normally have when we are in a normal condition is just enough for our needs. But sometimes if the energy is less, you fall ill. Okay? That can happen. So, more than that, the individual is by personal and hereditary habit unable to bear, use or control. If more energy comes into the body, okay, you are not able to sustain it. Okay. In Hatha Yoga, the equilibrium opens a door to the universalization of the individual vitality by admitting into the body, containing, using and controlling a much less fixed and limited action of the universal energy. It can allow a huge amount of energy to come in and he is able to sustain that energy. Okay, so now he is explaining to you what the asana and pranayama are. Okay, so those are the methods that the Hatha Yogin uses. The chief processes of Hatha Yoga are asana and pranayama. By its numerous asanas or fixed postures, it first cures the body of that restlessness, which is a sign of its inability to contain, without working them off in action and movement, the vital forces poured into it from the universal life ocean, gives to it an extraordinary health, force and suppleness, and seeks to liberate it from the habits by which it is subjected to ordinary physical nature and kept within narrow bounds of her normal operations. In the ancient tradition of Hatha Yoga, it has always been supposed that this conquest could be pushed so far even as to conquer to a great extent the force of gravitation. He is talking about levitation. By various subsidiary but elaborate processes, the Hatha Yogin next contrives to keep the body free from all impurities and the nervous system unclogged for those exercises of respiration which are his most important instruments. These are called pranayama, the control of the breath or vital power. For breathing is the chief physical functioning of the vital forces. Pranayama for the Hatha Yogin serves a double purpose. First, it completes the perfection of the body. The vitality is liberated from many of the ordinary necessities of physical nature. Robust health, prolonged youth, often an extraordinary longevity are attained. On the other hand, pranayama awakens the coiled up serpent of the pranic dynamism in the vital sheath and opens to the yogin fields of consciousness, ranges of experience, abnormal faculties denied to the ordinary human life, while it puissantly intensifies such novel powers and faculties as he already possesses. Okay? These advantages can be further secured and emphasized by other subsidiary processes open to the Hatha Yogin. These other processes, we will just touch upon them a little bit, but not go too much into detail because that's not our subject. Okay? So we'll quickly read what he's saying here because there are some things which you can point out. Okay? So we can give examples of longevity. Okay? Say we met somebody who lived for 300 years. Then we can give examples of levitation also, his own case in the jail. So I'll quickly go through this, and this will be our last paragraph today. The chief processes of Hatha Yoga are Asana and Pranayama. Asana everybody knows, and nowadays in the West it is called yoga. But it's not actually yoga. Asanas are only taking certain postures of the physical body to give it flexibility. Okay?
Stability and flexibility.
Yes. Stability and flexibility. You will notice that some children are incapable of sitting quiet because the amount of energy that is coming in, they are not able to absorb it quietly. They must spend it, so they become restless. But asanas allows you to become absolutely immobile even while absorbing the energy. That's the thing. Okay? Many people are very restless. Okay? They start getting up and moving about, and they can't sustain the amount of energy that is there in the body. This phenomena you will also see in many animals. If you see little puppies, okay, not kittens so much, but little puppies, their tremendous restlessness is there, constantly moving about and flitting about. They can't keep themselves fixed. Children also often are like that. Okay, so but the asanas, that's exactly what you do. You develop in the body and the vital the capacity to retain the energy without movement, without too much of movement. By its numerous asanas and fixed postures, it first cures the body of that restlessness, there you are, which is a sign of its inability to contain, without working them off in action and movement, the vital forces poured in from the universal life ocean. So, how do we absorb energy from the universal prana? First of all, through body. Okay? The body is taking in food. Food is the energy. So, that is the first source of prana in us. The second is the air that we are breathing in. Okay? The air that we are breathing in contains oxygen, and oxygen is a fuel. Oxygen is a fuel. Okay? So, this is the two things. But there are also subtle pranas which can come in. Even thoughts are pranas, okay, in a certain sense. So you are subjected to gross physical forces, vital forces, and even spiritual forces that come in. We are not even conscious of all these things. But sometimes when these things come in, you are not able to sustain them. Hatha Yoga trains the body to sustain them. Okay, so sometimes talking of the universal life ocean. There is a whole plane of, just as there is a plane of matter which is infinite, there is also a plane of life which is infinite. Universal life, prana, gives it an extraordinary health, force and suppleness and seeks to liberate it from its habits by which it is subjected to ordinary physical nature and kept within the narrow bounds of our normal operations. Okay? Everybody has got certain habits which limit you. Okay? Either you eat the wrong foods or you have certain other habits. There are people who are also very fidgety. So all these things, you can get rid of all these things by asanas, okay, and pranayama. In the ancient tradition of Hatha Yoga, it has always been supposed that this conquest of the body and the vital, can conquer to a great extent the force of gravitation. Okay? We might as well give an example here, because you may doubt whether levitation is possible, but in Sri Aurobindo case, he himself says that when he was in jail, at one time his intensity of concentration was so much that his whole body had gone up and only part of it was touching the ground and the rest was touching the wall. And when the Scottish guard came in front of his cell, he saw that, he got frightened and he rushed away. So Sri Aurobindo himself has. But he didn't follow that, because according to the Hatha Yogin, levitation is very important. But not in Sri Aurobindo's case. Sri Aurobindo is not so much worried about the levitation. He is concentrating more on the purification of the consciousness. Purify the mind, purify the vital. He is more interested in that. Okay? But levitation is certainly possible. There are many, many cases. And those who practice among the Buddhists and the Lamas and all that, it is not uncommon. Okay? Levitation. By various subsidiary but elaborate processes, the Hatha Yogin next contrives to keep the body free from all impurities and the nervous system unclogged for those exercises of respiration which are his most important instruments. So, I'll just touch upon these subsidiary but elaborate processes. Okay? I'll mention two things. Okay? One, what they do is, they take a thin 1-inch piece of cloth, very soft cloth. It must be very soft and long. Okay? Just 1 inch, very long. And you swallow it fully. It goes up to the stomach. And then you pull it out, all the phlegm and all that which is there, impurities in the esophagus and the stomach, they come out. So this is one way of doing it. Physically they are removing the impurities. Also they can do that with the intestines. They sit in a tub of water and they develop the capacity to suck in the water from the other end of the body. Okay? And then it comes out. Just like your normal, they do that in the nursing home sometimes when they want to clean your intestines. Okay? If they have to take an X-ray of your intestines, it must be clear of the usual stuff that is there inside. Enema. So they give you an enema. So the Hatha Yogin doesn't need an enema. He has the capacity to suck in the water from the wrong end of the body, the lower end of the body, and he can bring it out and clean his. So these are some of the subsidiary things that he is talking about. He has not gone into that, but these are the things that they do. Okay, so there are other. That's right. That's right. These are the words used. Okay? These are the subsidiary things. So there is not touching upon them. These then about respiration. Okay, sometimes the nose is blocked, but you must have a nose which is not blocked at all. So because your respiration should be, both the nostrils should be clear. And when you breathe in regularly, our breathing is normally very irregular. But if you can control your breathing in a very regular manner, and there is a rhythm in your breathing, it develops a capacity to make you calm and quiet. Okay? In fact, when someone is very excited, they always tell you, take a deep breath. Okay? So it does help to calm the body. The control of the breath of the vital body. For breathing is the chief physical functioning of the vital forces. Pranayama for the Hatha Yogin serves a double purpose. First, it completes the perfection of the body. Okay? Because the irregularity of the breathing goes away. The vitality is liberated from many of the ordinary necessities of physical nature. Okay? The ordinary necessities of physical nature, you can fall ill, okay? You can do, your eating is sometimes uncontrolled, so there is weakness, okay? All these things are there. But if you do that through the pranayama properly, you get robust health. Your health improves. Prolonged youth. Often an extraordinary longevity is attained. Sri Aurobindo himself has met Brahmananda on the banks of the Narmada. Brahmananda did not speak to him, but he just looked up at Sri Aurobindo. And it is said that Brahmananda lived for 300 years because he spoke of, Sri Aurobindo says, he spoke of the time when he had an incident in his life at the time of the Battle of Plassey, okay, or something like that. So that was 200 years earlier. So it is possible for them to live. In fact, in today's world, even without doing yoga, it's not uncommon for people in countries or in the places where there is very regular life, 120 years, 125 years, people are living. In the ashram, we have got more than half a dozen people who have lived beyond 100. So it's not uncommon at all. And many reach 90 very easily without doing pranayama. Okay. A regular life, okay? A regular disciplined life gives you prolonged, what is it called? He is calling it, he is calling it longevity. Your life becomes longer than usual. The vitality is liberated from many of the ordinary necessities of physical nature. Robust health, prolonged youth, often an extraordinary longevity is attained. On the other hand, pranayama awakes the coiled up serpent of the pranic dynamism in the vital sheath and opens to the yogin fields of consciousness, ranges of experience, abnormal faculties denied to the ordinary human life, while it puissantly intensifies such normal powers and faculties as he already possesses. Okay? So, he is talking of the chakras in the body. There are 7 chakras, including the Mooladhara at the bottom of the coccyx bone. And just as in universal nature, matter contains everything in it in seed form, okay? Matter contains life and mind, and even the supermind is contained there, and it evolves them slowly one by one. Exactly in the same way, the same process is repeated in the individual. And the lowest part of the individual is the coccyx bone. The spine is a representation of all the different planes of consciousness. And the coccyx bone at the bottom is the Mooladhara. And there all the energy is condensed and kept there. But when you do these breathing exercises and you concentrate on the chakras, you open up the power and this coiled up energy rises up. That's what he's saying. These advantages can be further secured and emphasized by other subsidiary processes open to the Hatha yogin. Those other subsidiary processes, we touched upon that briefly. He can do many other things. So he has dealt with Hatha yoga. Now Sri Aurobindo will tell you in the next paragraph that Hatha yoga gives you extraordinary results, but there are better things, and you can do with other systems, you can do more easily what Hatha yoga is achieving. That's what he will tell you in the next. So today we stop here for the time being.